Hey everyone. Okay, so in part one of this video, this is my February wrap-up part two, and in part one, I went on and on over like one book pretty much. So sorry about that. But in case you didn't get the impression from that video, I completely loved that book, and I gave it a giant 5 out of 5 stars. So that was Convenient Marriage by Georgette Hare, and then after I read that, that was Valentine's Day, and the 15th as well. So after that, that kind of created a little bit of a monster, and I ended up listening to 2 other Georgette Hare audiobooks over that coming weekend. So I listened to all 3 in a period of about 4 days. So the other 2 that I listened to, the next one was Sylvester, and this was also narrated by the wonderful Richard Armitage. This one, plot-wise, I liked a little bit less than Convenient Marriage, I think. Well, okay, I can't remember if it was the characters or the plot. I think there were parts of the plot that I just didn't think were necessary or didn't make as much sense to me. So that the story overall, in my opinion, didn't flow as nicely as Convenient Marriage. So I probably gave that one like a 4.5 out of 5 instead of a 5-star, as I did with Convenient Marriage. But this one is about a guy called Sylvester who, he is oh gosh, I forget his title. He might be an earl. But anyway, he's a young, lord of some sort. And he is kind of full of himself a little bit, and he is his nephew's guardian because his nephew, or because his twin brother actually passed away, sadly, and his sister-in-law is kind of, she's not she's not a bad mother, but she's a very, I guess the word is flighty mother. That might be the better word. Sometimes she doesn't pay the best attention to her son. And so he is the kid's guardian because of that. And his mother is actually trying to very strongly encourage him to take a wife, because ever since his twin brother died, he is now he inherited the title, because I think his brother was, wait, no, maybe he always had the title. Okay, I forget. Anyway, his mother is encouraging him to take a wife, and the wife she is trying to, shall we say, push into his arms is her very good friend's niece, and this very good friend happens to be Sylvester's godmother. So Sylvester's godmother's niece, is the woman who their 2 families are trying to push them together. And in trying to push them together, what they do is her parents actually end up inviting him to stay at their house. And the girl pretty much knows immediately, I think they both know immediately what's going on. And so the girl actually convinces her best friend, who is a guy who lives on, I think he lives in the village, but basically her best friend from childhood, she convinces him to basically escort her to her to her aunt's, who is Sylvester's godmother, in London. And this kind of creates a little bit of a scandal, because everyone thinks that they are running away to get married when they're actually just, he doesn't want her to go to London by herself. So then Sylvester ends up going after them to make sure that they aren't trying to elope, not because he wants to marry her instead, but he just knows that that would be a huge scandal for her and her family. So he goes after them to try to make sure they're not getting married, and it turns out that on the way there, her carriage gets, and I'm sorry I keep saying her, I'm kind of forgetting the girl's name, unfortunately. But anyway, her carriage ends up getting turned over or broken down or something, where they end up stranded at a country inn, And then, of course, Sylvester comes and finds them, and they all kind of end up trapped at this inn because there is a giant snowstorm, so they can't really leave and be safe. So then they're trapped there for a few days, and I think the best friend who was escorting her, he ended up, I think, getting a sprained ankle or something, so he's kind of laid up in bed for this whole time. And so Sylvester and the girl whose name I'm forgetting, and I'm so sorry about that, end up kind of being forced to get to know each other, and kind of are allied in trying to help this friend, and, you know, try to figure out how to, like, when they can leave and stuff and all that. And as they get to know each other, they kind of realize that their perceptions of each other are entirely wrong. So it's basically very Pride and Prejudice-y. And that was the part that I actually really loved about it. And I did end up really liking Sylvester's character as well as the main girl, but and the best friend as well. But there were parts where I just thought they were a little unnecessary or a little too fluffy. Like, you know, that she was just putting them in there for filler, that kind of thing. So that was a little bit less, but I would still give that one a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I did really enjoy it. I just didn't quite enjoy it as much as Convenient Marriage. Then comes Venetia, and oh my gosh, this one was right back to Convenient Marriage as far as how much I loved it. This is about a girl who, she and her little brother are basically on their own. Their older brother is off at Oxford, and their father, their mother died when they were little, and their father pretty much became a hermit, and he I don't know if he thought he couldn't take care of them or he didn't want the responsibility, so he basically sends them to his country estate, and that's where they've grown up without him. I think he, like, lives in London or something, and they live on this country estate. And at this point, Venetia is like 25, and she has a couple of different suitors, but neither are really, she's not really interested in either of them. One of them is like a young, very young suitor. He's like 18, and she's like, I don't know why you're trying to court me. You're like 7 years younger than me, and you're kind of still really childish, and yeah, so anyway, and the other one she just thinks is way too full of himself. So yeah, she's not really interested in either of these guys. And then this other guy, Lord Damerel, comes along, and he has the worst reputation. Like, he is just considered a complete rake. And he actually ends up, I don't know if he buys the adjoining property or if it's always, I think it's always been his property and he just isn't there very often. So he goes to stay there, and he and Venetia accidentally meet and are immediately kind of smitten with each other. And at first they kind of just become really good friends, actually. It's a really interesting start to their relationship, that they genuinely kind of get to know each other and immediately become concerned for each other's welfare. So instead of like, okay, I was going to say instead of love at first sight, it's like friendship at first sight, but it's also, they know that they do have feelings for each other. But it's kind of a will they, won't they, should they, because pretty much everyone in Venetia's life is like, okay, this dude is no good for you, just trust us, no. But, you know, she doesn't want to not follow her heart just because a bunch of people tell her, hey, this is a bad idea. So then she ends up, they end up in a relationship, and it's kind of just what's going to happen from there. Like, and a huge question throughout the story is like, as a reader, from the reader's perspective, it's like, okay, are we with Venetia? Like, we kind of see him through Venetia's eyes. So it's really, should we trust this? And, like, is he a good guy? Or do we trust everybody who's telling her that he's no good? So, yeah, I just really, really loved this a lot. Again, like, plot-wise and character-wise, it was on point with Convenient Marriage. It wasn't as comedic as Convenient Marriage, but I just really loved it because I loved, I don't know, like, there are different things that I love about each one. So, yeah, it was really, really good, and I completely loved it. So yeah, sadly, that was the last audiobook that was narrated by Richard Armitage. But yeah, it was completely fantastic. And I think, luckily these are on Overdrive, and they're available often enough that I think I'm going to be able to repeatedly listen to them anytime I want to without actually having to buy them from Audible, which is good. Like, you know, I probably will buy them eventually, but for now, I think just getting them off Overdrive a couple times is great. And I ended up loving these so much that I actually got the ebook of Friday's Child off of Overdrive. I didn't want to listen to another one of the audiobooks because, well, mainly because Friday's Child is the one that I really wanted to read next. For the summary, like, I just thought that one sounded the best, and it's the one I've wanted to read for a while. And that one didn't actually have an audiobook. But also, I'm kind of worried about listening to any more Georgette Hare audiobooks because none of them will be narrated by Richard Armitage, and he does such a fantastic job. So, yeah, anyway, so now I'm reading Friday's Child, and that one is about a girl who, her family doesn't really like her very much. She's, like, quite young, and her name's Hero, and yeah, her family doesn't really like her very much. They took her in at a young age, and they treat her like Cinderella, basically. And she ends up getting into a marriage of convenience. It's another marriage of convenience with one of her good childhood friends, whose name is Lord Sheringham, I want to say. And Lord Sheringham's situation is he has just proposed to this girl who he really likes her, but this girl is like, you have a gambling problem, you drink too much, she thinks that he's a good guy, but that he just has some really bad habits that he needs to fix, and that's why she doesn't really want to marry him. So she says no. And she also says, and by the way, you're only proposing to me because you have this trust of money that says you can't touch it until you get married or your 25th birthday. He's like 24 at this point, so he just really wants to, or maybe he's like 23, but he basically wants to get married in order to get the trust. But he does genuinely, seem to care about this woman who he proposes to, who says no thank you. So then he gets very hurt and upset about that, and he's like, all right, that's it. I'm proposing to the next woman who I see. And he happens to run into his childhood friend, Hero. And, you know, she wants out of her family situation because her family sucks and they're terrible. And he needs a wife in order to inherit his estate and this trust of money. So, yes, marriage of convenience starts out as a really good friendship. Don't actually know where it's going because I'm only halfway through it, but I am thoroughly enjoying this so far. And yeah, I took another 15 minutes to just talk about 2 books, 2.5. So I'm very sorry about that, and I will do a February wrap-up part 3 talking about the last 4 books that I read in February, and I promise those will be faster. Because while I really enjoyed those, I didn't enjoy them as much as the Georgette Hares, so I don't have as much to say. But Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for part 3, and let me know what you think of any of the books that I've talked about, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye.